I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for Monday, July 15th, 2013 to order. First order of business is public forum. Seeing only town employees here, I think we can dispense with that. Item 2, before we move on to that, Ken gives his apologies for not being able to make it today, sort of last minute. And both Lou and Mike were on scheduled vacation time, so nonetheless. Item 2, approved minutes. Regular meeting minutes, June 19th, 2013. Any comments, questions, additions, deletions, changes?
A couple of minor typos.
Okay.
3.1, the first paragraph, last sentence. He questioned if this is the only case or instead of. Next page, page 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down. Second line, it's like athletes and such as athletes, so it's one or the other. And then let's see, page 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 paragraphs down. Ms. Trudeau said they would be using less payer, and it would make staff in the process more efficient. Less paper, I believe, it's supposed to be. That's it.
Any others? There's none. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No abstentions. Item 3, correspondence. We got one standing building committee minutes. Unfortunately, we don't have the benefit of Mike at this meeting. However, he was at the July 2nd meeting, as is reflected in the minutes, and he did ask some of the questions that I think were raised at our recent meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So, are there any questions or concerns or comments or further questions for Mike?
Well, the only comment I would make, and this is 19 on the first page, beginning under new business, review of the bid concerning town hall boiler upgrades. All right, and we notice here we had an original estimate of $100,000 for that, but because of the Davis-Bacon legislation, which mandates prevailing wage, which equates to union wage, the price has increased to $144,000. My understanding, I'd like to know how we got to that figure, because I know, unions always inflate the wages.
Right.
But my understanding was that was in the area of 25%, rather than, almost 50% that apparently we're showing here. I would just like some explanation for that, but I don't know if we're going to get it tonight.
Well, we won't get it tonight, but can we take that as a question? It did mention, someone was asking for a more detailed scope of work. My question immediately went to, was the original estimate, what was that based on? And was that was that a number that was,
Sure.
Was viable, not, and again, I agree with you. I was surprised that the wages would go up that much. But, so if we put that in a question that Mike can ask the next time. Any others?
I just wanted some clarification on that same topic. And what I was going to ask, and maybe Joe may know the answer, is this replacement of the boiler at all attached to the energy fund or cutting over to gas?
Is it attached to what?
Is this in any way connected to the plan to change the town hall over to gas?
We're talking about the town hall boilers, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And then will it get financed from some of that money we set aside for the energy?
No, it's part of the $200,000 a year that was voted upon by the voters to do energy
Okay.
improvements.
So it is part of the energy then?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's what I was actually hoping. And the other thing that confused me at the bottom is it said in response to a question by Mr. Goodrich, Mr. Nadorf noted that the fire marshal has advised that the system needs to be diesel as per code. So I was wondering, is this also some kind of diesel boiler? It just seemed odd. Is this for the generator maybe?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know what the term easel means.
Oddity there.
Any others? No? Move on to 3.1, pension committee minutes.
Wow.
Perfect time. Pension committee. You happen to have the most recent returns?
I do. I have the reports for you, I'll give you in there, but the
Right.
return at the end of June is 7.84%. Dropped a little bit from May.
So beat our 7.5%.
We did.
Target, right? Terrific.
That was 7.84. That's good to hear.
Congratulations to the pension
Yeah,
committee and
right.
their money managers and their managers. Well done. Of course, if you slide down to item 5, a couple of pretty significant lump sum benefits. We won't mention the names.
Right, right.
But, nearly $750,000 worth of lump sum disbursement. So we need to continue to earn that 7.84%.
I just have one brief question.
Yep.
I know, I think it might have been on the last report or the one previous, we were trying to get a little bit of cash invested, and I think we held off. Did we decide to move on that recently, or?
They haven't made a decision yet. They're meeting again on Wednesday. There is about $2 million in cash, though, which is a little high. And actually, there's quite a bit more as of this week because we made our pension contribution for fiscal 14 this week. So they need to make a decision on that, I would think, at this upcoming meeting.
Just curious if we got it to work already.
Man, I have a question, and I think, Joe or Sheila can answer this. With respect to those lump sum payouts, are we phasing those out?
That is a collective bargaining issue,
Okay,
which, yeah, let's leave it like that. Okay.
all right.
Which we address. I could say the ones that we have settled, like the GSA, is now shut off from the lump sum distribution as of December 2012. They can no longer take a lump sum if they're in the GSA bargaining unit. The police department for years has not been able to take a lump sum distribution. So there are some bargaining units that still have in their contract, which we're addressing.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, item 4, review and accept the report of expenditures to the Board of Education for June 2013. You guys want to, might as well use this side, right? What looks better symmetric? Over here.
Shake it up a little bit.
That's it. Chairman Bloss?
The hardy souls are here this evening, and that's nice. Well, cutting to the chase, cutting to the end, I guess, before going through some of the details, we will end the year with a surplus, a modest surplus, but a surplus nonetheless. Given some of the issues that we were confronting, and I know that the town was confronting some of the same issues between the hurricane and snow, and with ours confronting the issue of special education outplacements, the fact that we are going to be in a slight surplus situation, I think, is really a credit to the management of the administration and how they handled some of these really very difficult issues, especially relating to special education. As I think you probably know, we have hired a new special education coordinator, and as part of the budget presentation this year, we anticipate being able to bring back in the district a substantial number of children that had been outplaced with the consent and the concurrence, the complete concurrence of the parents involved. So we think that that's going to really wind up being one of these areas where we are going to be able to deliver better services for less money. And so we hope not to have to come back here every month and say our special education outplacement projections are off. And so we hope that we'll be able to reinvest that money in the program within the district and save some money. So the total of we expect that the surplus is going to be somewhere between $70,000 at a lower level and $100,000 at the higher level. There are some encumbrances that we've done this year, consistent with, and I'll get into that a little bit, just talking about some of the specific issues that we were facing this year. But the total expenditures for the month of June were $8,497,484. We were under expended for the year for salaries. The reason is because we had a higher number of retirements than we expected there to be. This is one of my I guess complaint is too strong a term, observation. We have to start planning the budget so early that we wind up planning that line before we have any idea how many retirements there are going to be. And so if we were to push back the budget preparation by a month or something, we'd be able to give you better numbers on those. But we take an estimate based on historic patterns. This year we happen to have more. Employee benefits, there is a slight additional expenditure for actuarial work and some annuity payments. Purchase services, we expect there to be some additional payments for legal and for athletic transportation, and for utilities, that's just a billing timing issue. Tuition, there's going to be a little bit of additional expenditures, just again strictly billing, timing of sending out bills by the providers. Supplies and materials, we are going to be, we're encumbered some money in June to pay in July. That was one of the lines in the budget that was frozen for pending the special education outplacement issue. Once it appeared that we were going to be all right on that in the overall context, we unfroze the supplies and materials line, and we were able to really actually, it's still under budget, but it's within the budgetary number, but the encumbrance is coming due in July. Capital, there was a big issue, relatively big issue in capital that you probably know about. The fuel tank at the bus yard had to be replaced, and that is an encumbrance within this now. The bill has not been paid yet, or it may have been paid by now, but it had not been paid as of June 30th. But that was going to have to come out of either last year's operating budget or this year's operating budget, because it was not a bonded item, and we believed that it was prudent, given that the problem developed in 2012-13, that it was appropriate to pay out of last year's operating budget. So that is essentially some of the additional items, some of the encumbrances. One of the larger items, and I know that you were just asking a question about lump sum pension payouts. We did have a very substantial retirement sick pay payout this year because we had more retirements than we were expecting. We budget usually in the area of $150,000 a year for that. This year we paid out almost $290,000. The only people that are eligible for that are teachers that were hired prior to 1998, and I joined the board in 1999, so I'll take no responsibility for it whatsoever. But in any event, that is not a benefit that is in any...
It's a diminishing liability.
Yeah, it's a diminishing liability, and so once it's going to be the same number. It's going to be the same rough number depending on the number of retirements. We usually budget for around 5 or 6. This year we happen to have more than that. So that was something that we legally could have paid out of next year's operating budget, but given the uncertainties that we have with special education in particular and some of the other items, we thought it was prudent to pay out of this year's operating budget. And it is this year's liability, frankly, so we should pay it. I can, either Ms. Trudeau or I can answer some questions about the warrants as you wish, whatever your preference would be.
I did have one quick question. Congratulations on the projections on the surplus and returning some to general fund, somewhere between 70 and possibly as high as 100,000. And again, please refresh my memory. Do we have any outstanding FEMA claims for storms as well?
It would all go to the town, as I understand it. That doesn't go, nothing like that goes to the Board of Education.
But it comes out of your expense base, though.
It would.
So.
Right.
It's all the same town.
Well,
I agree, but
It will go back to the Board of Ed.
that's kind of what I thought. So that number could increase beyond the 70 to 100,000.
Yes.
Sure. But my expectation, depending on how the budget looks next year, my expectation is that the Board of Finance would encourage that to go into the reserve fund.
We're willing to discuss that option, because you've come several times and asked about capital fund,
Right.
putting together a capital building fund. And, while we're thrilled with the 70 to 100,000, and I anticipate good news from the finance director relative to the town side in terms of our ability to grow the undesignated fund balance. Fingers crossed, Joe.
I'm watching Joe here.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe's not comfortable.
He's not gonna, don't spend it, don't spend it until it, drink on the ink, is that what they used to say? Yeah. But obviously that number could increase, which I think you need the benefit of acknowledgement that your savings against your operating budget was greater than 70 to 100,000.
Given the
If that's
FEMA
the case,
reimbursements,
given
if
FEMA
those happen,
reimbursements.
yeah.
So that's my point.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah, but you also have to offset that with the fact that the contribution to the medical insurance was
understood.
decreased.
Yep, by
And we
200.
ended the year in a negative position, which we wouldn't have
True.
if the Board of Ed hadn't cut their contribution.
And we talked about how we massage all of these things together, so.
And we take, on the medical, we take a long-term view. The one thing I think we've learned in the last 3 years or 4 years is that there are ups and downs, and there are big months and there are small months, and there is no way to predict either one of them that I can tell. It wasn't that long ago that we were in a horrible, not a huge, I mean, it really is a timing issue as much as it is anything, but that number disappeared, the deficit disappeared almost overnight. It was really in a matter of months.
A couple of years.
Well, not really, because it went from 1 million to 200,000 within a fiscal year, is my recollection. I think so.
No, I think it was
No, I'm talking about the Board of
Oh,
Ed
the Board
side.
of
I'm
Ed
not
side.
talking about,
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
talking about the town side. I don't know those numbers.
Gotcha.
But it really wound up getting handled relatively quickly. We had a huge month in June for expenses, and I don't know, and there's some some unique circumstances in terms of I think there are some claims that have approached the stop loss, and statistically, really it takes one or two of that level of a claim to really change the dynamics of the year very, very thoroughly, just because we're such a small town.
I just want to make the usual comments, I think, on special education, and I think those comments are that it's exceptional, and I've always expressed the accolades to the Board of Education and the superintendent and his staff for getting together the special education programs like the new autism program, and I think it's definitely working. Seeing that you want to now take 8 to 10 possible outplacements now, would prefer to have the services in-house with the autism program. But I do want to mention that I remain cautiously optimistic. I did see that maybe 8 to 10 outplacements may be coming in-house, but then I also saw that you may need to hire 3.4, I think, was possible projection of additional staff. So in the net, I'm wondering, are we still just looking at special education costs that are just rising and rising, much higher than income or revenue? And the greatest challenge before, the Board of Education right now is really to consider special education, provide excellent service, but at the right cost.
It's fair to say that we have spent, short of issues like implementing Common Core state standards and a new teacher evaluation program, which incidentally our program has been approved by the state. They actually said that it exceeded state requirements in one very material respect, but in any event. Other than that, the special ed issues generally, the report that we commissioned a couple of years ago, I think it is, as long as we're in the cautiously optimistic and not speaking too soon mode, I'm cautiously optimistic that there are really going to be some major improvements at a cost savings because of what the Futures report recommended, what the new special education director has recommended. One of the issues when we hired Dr. Freeman, we said, look, we're very comfortable with large parts of the special education program. We think we can do better services at cheaper cost in some other areas, and he accepted that, and he everybody we interviewed, we gave a copy of the futures report to and said, look, you know, how would you implement this? What would you do? And really what I think, I think it's more than a hope, I think it's what we expect, is that the 8 to 10 children that are going to be brought back in, we do have to provide some increased services for them. These are not children that you can go from an outplacement at $100,000 a year to just mainstreaming in a regular ed classroom. That's not going to happen. These are children that can't be educated in a completely traditional regular education classroom setting. On the other hand, you can hire a lot of support for the amount of money that we're spending on some of the tuitions, on some of the outplacements. And we wouldn't be doing this if we thought that it was a break-even proposition. I think that the expectation is we've tried to be conservative, but I think that our very strong expectation is that we're going to be able to deliver better services with less investment, and we'll be able to either reduce budget requests or reinvest in it in a different way. But I'm quite hopeful about that.
You know, just for the record, Jonathan, I don't know if you're aware of this. I'm sure you probably recall this. I asked exactly that same question at the last meeting, and Keith Bishop was here last month, and he, as I say, I questioned if you recall it. You know, we had a fairly extensive discussion about this, and I think this is an issue, quite frankly, that is not going to go away. I think people are going to be asking this question,
sure.
You know, as to the efficiency of this program, the people coming back, you know, into the system. We understand, I think everybody understands that you're going to have to provide a very high level of in-house service for these people. That's going to entail, you know, the hiring of additional staff and so forth. But as I say, I brought up, you know, just so you know, I brought up the exact same question with Keith Bishop.
Look, it's a fair question, because this has been the single of the budget items that have been hardest to predict from year to year to year. I mean, you know, I'm guessing I'm sitting where Ken Gammerman usually sits, and maybe I'm channeling him. Right? It has never, and I said this to Mr. Potocny, and you know, not too long before he retired, said, I want you to be under, you know, just one time. I'd like you to say that, gee, we got great news, we're under budget by $500,000 on special ed. But it didn't happen. It was always above budgeted estimates. Now, some of that is due to a lot of different things. The state reimbursements have fluctuated, you know, and that's another area where 1 or 2 children moving into the district can completely change the dynamics of the situation. You know, we did have a family that moved into town that, you know, that I think, I forget what the exact number is, but there were multiple children with multiple very substantial needs, and they came in after the school year started. And so we have a legal obligation to educate them to a particular level, but it was not in our budget.
You know, just in the context of this question, though, where we are today compared to where we were just maybe 2 years ago discussing this is exceptional. You know, we have an in-house program. It's attractive. People are interested in it. I'm looking for that traction, though, in the budget.
My suspicion is you're going to see it next spring, because I believe our new special ed director, Virginia Brown, is a star. And she, in her old district, she was in Stonington, I think, last district she worked in, she had exactly the same issue as we have. And she was able to bring many of the outplacements in. You know, I think the majority of parents that their children are outplaced would rather have them in town. I mean, we send kids on buses an hour one-way drive, one way, to get to a specialized program. I mean, you know, I just don't think that, I think that most parents would say, look, if you've got an equivalent program, you can do it in town. I don't care how much it costs. I'd rather have my child in town, not on a bus for an hour, one way. But I think, I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to keep this, that we are going to see some budgetary impact. It's a growing percentage of our entire budget. If you track it over the years, it has the average that we spend on special education, depending on how you account for it, and that's something every district does it differently. For example, all of our paras are contained within our special education budget, no matter how much time they spend on non-special education work. So not every district does that. by spending a lot more time on accounting, could we make it a finer calculation? I suppose. But having said that, I think it is fair to say that we spend proportionately more than many comparable districts on special education as a whole, largely because of the outplacement issue. And that, I think I don't think there's ever been a year that we've reduced the number of expected outplacements by a quarter, if it's 10 from 40, that's a pretty good
And
development.
if you had reduced them in the past, it was not of your own doing. It was the luck of the population, basically, and what students you had to serve, because you
Right.
weren't in placing them.
Well,
I think the other point that's important to make, and I think this one goes to your question, Jonathan, by being able to control certain portions of your special education costs through an in-house program, you are not subject to the to the market conditions out there, where you have no control over cost increases in the services being provided to you by some of these other organizations.
Well-
This we have control over.
Well, and there's even another component to it. I think that one of the most remarkable aspects of bringing 8 to 10 children back in district is that these are children that have not been in district for a period of time, and their parents have said, look, we'd like to give it a shot, and we're going to bring these children back. Now, that's not easy. And so the parents are taking a little bit of a leap of faith here, too, because presumably they're getting decent services or good services at whatever outplacement program they're in. It's only going to get better. Because as children come back in and their services are of a consistent high quality, then the next parent who's thinking about, is this going to be an appropriate setting for my child, will rely on the experience of last year's child. And everybody talks. Guilford everybody knows somebody. They know. And I think the success of the autism program is going to, for example, wind up generating reduced costs because people are going to be willing to give it a chance because of the experience of last year's children.
Now, one more question on this, and I probably said this one before as well, but do you see other towns possibly wanting to join our program as well?
Yeah,
I've always seen this as the way to reach economies of scale, is to actually bring the other towns into our program.
I think it is possible, and especially with programs like the autism program or like the high school program that we're doing for the 18 to 21-year-old special ed students. We are actually partnering, I believe, with Madison and Clinton on that, is my recollection. But I think it's quite possible because if we can do this with a substantial economy over a private program up in Windsor or Bloomfield or somewhere else, why wouldn't you explore that?
It's excellent. The potential is there.
Yeah, sure.
Questions? Ken Garriman, who was unable to be here, had a couple of questions that he asked that I ask for you folks. The first of which, apropos of Ken's passion, on the warrants, page 1 of the 7113, the ACES invoices. And his question is this part of tuition or special services, and are these late surprises or anticipated year-end expenditures? And I think it's basically $90,000.
All of the warrants on page 1 there?
Yeah.
They are some tuition, which are June tuitions,
Yep.
and the rest of them are support services, and some of the invoices they're all expected.
Okay.
The dates go back to February. They're invoices that we had not received.
All right.
So we were trying to get caught up and catch everything up. So it was February, March, April
Okay.
invoices.
And then he had something on the community forum minutes. And the question is the Board of Ed planning any changes in the math program for high achieving students? And was there community input on curriculum recommendations in any other areas?
Well, technically, that wasn't a Board of Education meeting, so that was a presentation by the superintendent, which I was quick to remind everybody when they wanted to approve those minutes. It wasn't a Board of Ed meeting. It wasn't posted as a Board of Ed meeting. We don't approve minutes of other people's meetings.
So you're
as a
taking
matter
the
of
fifth on
practice.
this?
No. No. There's been a tremendous amount of discussion about what to do and how the Common Core state standards are going to treat also treat high-achieving students across all sorts of areas. It seems to have been focused more on math, I think for a couple of specific reasons, and they're completely legitimate questions. And the expectation is, I know a group of parents met with Mrs. Walker at Adams last week to talk about how specifically she was going to implement, how she was going to incorporate the high-achieving math student class at Baldwin. Currently with Mr. McMahon, there is a group of children that are together in his class that's an advanced math class. I think that she does have a plan to try to take advantage of the advanced instruction that those children have had over the last year. We do have parental input. If the question relates to curriculum development, we do have parental input on all of the curriculum development and also board input, obviously. And we did just adopt a new math curriculum. So that's on the very short list of issues that we have emphasized to Dr. Freeman that we do anticipate some accommodation for.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education for June 2013?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Any recusals? No. Good. Item 5, review and approve expenditures for town government for June 2013.
I'm sure you can explain to me now
Yeah,
what
Enjoyment.
the second question
Give you some
about
room.
education has to do with the finance.
Safer over here, away from the chairman.
It's safer on that side.
Just a creature now.
Good call, John. Sheila, what would you like to bring to our attention?
Okay, we have June reports. They're not final. They won't be final until next month. There's still some work we need to do to really come to a better number, but I can probably give you a very close idea of where we are.
Okay.
We'll start with revenue.
Yep.
I think last month I said we were probably going to be close to breaking even, and I still think we will. There's a few items that are, let me see if I can grab my report first. I could probably do it by heart. There are a few items that we still have to collect. The 30-day accruals for tax collector, ambulance, and youth and family. Probably about $150,000 for all three. We have this school construction grant money, which we're still working on, that will come in. That's about $141,000. We have the municipal revenue cost sharing, which is the town's portion of the state sales tax. And I did speak with OPM about that, and they are not sure what our allocation is going to be until they see the receipts for the year. They come in July. We won't get paid until August, but they did warn me that the receipts are down quite a bit. So I'm estimating about $100,000.
We only get that once a year.
Once a year, we got $157,000 last year. They're not sure if the state's going to provide them with the last 2 months of the fiscal year into their pool of funds to distribute to the municipalities or not. So if they only go with 10 months' worth and we figure they're down 25%, it comes out to about $100,000. And there's one more payment left on the manufacturing transition grant. So if you factor in all of that, we are almost even, maybe short 50 to 75,000, but that's still about even. Okay, any questions on revenue?
Yeah, pretty close.
That's pretty good.
Excellent. Building department continues to come in strong.
There are so many departments this year that exceeded their budget in a positive way. On the revenue side, they generated more revenue than budget. We like that.
And you already talked about the accruals, the 30-day accruals for youth and family service and fire department, who are already at 103 and 97.
I know,
98%.
and you
That's-
know, I already was approached by one of the department heads that asked if we could not do the 30-day accrual and save it for next year, just in case. I'd rather not.
You gotta be
No.
consistent.
Yeah.
No. Any other questions, Sheila, on the revenues?
My only question, just going forward, is next year's budget. did we really underestimate revenues, or did we, without having it in front of me, did we bump them up, or are we going to find ourselves in the same position next year?
Which is a good position,
It's a good
actually.
position, but
We were pretty conservative with our revenue projections. Again, I think we may have bumped some up very little, but I'm okay with that.
okay.
So am I, because
Yeah.
there were a number of years where we were not as
We were
conservative
going
as
the
we
other
should have
way,
been,
yes.
and we wound up with deficits on our revenues.
Well, as the economy
On the revenue.
Economy sort of
tanked, and we
tanked,
didn't,
yeah.
it took us a while
It took
to,
us a while to
Catch
realize
up.
how bad it was. Yeah.
And the one that comes to my mind was the building department. We increased that by 5,000.
okay.
Not a
So-
big number.
Yeah, they're.
So if things continue to go well, then
Right.
we should look at
I have a
it.
question, Sheila. You'll have to forgive me because it's probably a question we've asked before. But what happened with the tax collector fees line? This line here.
Oh, no. That, those are fees that those are fees that we collect from, generally, that was from the tax sale.
Okay. So it came in as negative revenue though, right? Negative 100 and...
That's the way the tax sale was recorded.
Okay.
It's an offset.
Yep. Fine. Guess I just noted too that I guess we didn't sell too many beach passes at the end of the year either. Or do we still have a little more to go, or is this is 100% now?
The revenue should be in
Okay.
for June. I mean, there still may be some, but generally, all the revenue for June that went into the bank was recorded.
Okay.
It was,
Part of that slow down on beach classes because with the uncertainty of when Jacobs was going to be available, so people didn't want to buy passes if
we couldn't get there.
beach wasn't going to be ready, so
One of the other
that's
things.
changed though.
Not our largest source of revenue, but I was curious about that.
Nope.
Lou brought this up last month, and we've collected more money on recycling that's not showing here.
Okay.
We have it as part of the waste transfer collections, and we still have to do some journal entries to adjust that.
Adjust it.
But we do have some, probably about $3,000 or $4,000 worth of recycling revenue that's not
Not
here.
recorded here. Okay. Ken did have a question. Actually, he had the same question Jonathan did about the beach passes. He also noted, his question was 82% of Connecticut revenues from the state of Connecticut revenues, and I think you've already answered that question, that we expect school construction grant to win. All right. Any other questions on revenue? Expenditure.
Okay, on expenditures, the report that you have is missing a few things because we just didn't have a chance to book all the entries. It's hard to get you a really up-to-date report when we really have another month to go. We try to do as much as we can. But one of the things that was there was actually two big things. The payroll accrual for the people that were paid a week behind, July 5th. That's not booked. I booked it now, so I can give you updated numbers. And the June payment for the medical contribution, $166,000, that was also not recorded in time for the report, when the report was released. So I'm going to give you some projections on expenditures. It reflects those items, though. And there's a few other things I'll tell you about. But one thing also, after the reports were completed, we got word from our newest project specialist at FEMA that they've accepted $604,000 worth of claims. That's just for Storm Sandy. That's not for the snowstorm, which we haven't. I have numbers on the snowstorm about 95% completed. I've been saying that for a while. They've been 95% completed. I can't even remember what they are at this point because we've been so focused on Sandy. We haven't even worked with FEMA on them yet. So it's probably another 200,000 or so that we will probably have a better feel for in the next 30 days as to what they're going to accept. Because the new specialist is going to move right on to the snowstorm now that we finished Sandy. It doesn't end. But 75% of 604,000 is 453,000. That will be booked as a receivable in the appropriate departments where the expenses were incurred. But if you look at, well, I can tell you that the Storm Sandy expenditures totaled $362,000. And we put in a claim for 604 because there's the indirect cost, the equipment, and 75 is the 453, so we made almost 100,000. That was my hope. That covers the equipment costs. Some of that,
So if the snowstorm is 200,000, assume 75% again on that number, so that's another 150,000. Basically puts us 600,000, over 600,000.
yeah, I don't have that, finalized yet, so I'll update you next month on that. Other things, as far as, there's about $50,000 of waste transfer reimbursements that are normal insurance and workers' comp type things that aren't recorded yet. They will be. There's some insurance reimbursements that we expect to receive. One is for the oil remediation. There are gas reimbursements, there's fuel reimbursements from the various departments back into public works budgets, some from the special funds. There's a few things that need to be done. But all in all, we're probably looking at conservatively 800,000 surplus.
That's net of the FEMA money?
Yes,
That includes the FEMA?
yes.
Just your current, the document provided us, the total available balance per budget report is 834, so that's going to go down by over 600,000. Payroll was part of that, you said, the payroll accrual.
Yeah, it's probably going to go down to about 400
Okay,
because that's, and then we have another 400 to add back.
right.
Another 50 for waste transfer. These are things that are,
Okay.
There's quite a few blanket encumbrances. I just looked right now, I have the encumbrance report with me. There's 40,000 in salt and sand.
Right.
I know that all the bills have been paid. So there are always blanket encumbrances that get canceled. And, when we talk about fund balance too, we have to factor in the Board of Ed's as well, which I did
Right.
not, so that gets added to that. I see things, as I look at the report, that I know that there's a $25,000 deficit in youth and family services, full-time salaries. That's the grant that they get, they budget for, that has to get transferred in.
Okay.
So there's
All right, so
all good things.
yeah, so if we put the Board of Ed together with the projected 800,000, it's spent 900,000 to undesignated fund, about $1 million. Joe says $1 million.
Yeah.
Rounding up. That's tremendous.
That's pretty
How
good.
much to undesignated? Can you repeat that?
About $1 million to undesignated
I'm
fund.
going to whisper.
You want to repeat it again?
I thought
No.
I thought it was even higher. I thought it was $1.4 million.
Well, no, Sheila's got to back out numbers out of that town available balance per budget report. She's going to back out a significant amount of money out of that. That's terrific.
Some of that hinges on the state coming through. I said that last
Oh, yeah,
time.
yeah, we know there are, it's not guaranteed. Good.
Sheila, I have a question, and I think I may have asked the same question a month ago, and I'm still somewhat confused about it, and that's the Natural Resources Department. We're showing a deficit there of 56,000. What is can you just tell me what the Natural Resources Department does and why we're running that deficit? Is that related to some of the storms we're
Okay.
talking about, or?
Natural Resources was created in the 13 budget. It's a combination of environmental planning, tree warden, inland wetlands, scenic roads. It was several departments that were
Right.
consolidated. Right now, there's a $15,000 encumbrance in the tree removal line, I believe. It's about $15,000, which is causing a deficit in that line item. It's for emergency tree work. I suspect that's going to be canceled because we're pretty much done with the year and we're into fiscal 14 now. The rest of the deficit is due to the storm.
Okay.
So as soon as I book the receivable and cancel the encumbrance, there will be no deficit in that line, in that whole department.
And I'm assuming some of that deficit would be covered by FEMA money?
Right, there's $12,000, $12,000 is due to the the encumbrance for emergency tree work. And then 52,000 is a deficit from the storm. So we will put their portion, whatever their expenditures were that we claimed times 0.75.
Right.
That will go in as a reduction to expenditures. It will clean up that.
Okay.
And this is an example of one of the reasons why you don't have any transfers this month.
Because we're still waiting.
Yeah, we need to, I don't want to do them twice.
It's fine.
I guess I have a couple of questions, just on, a few areas where we just missed a little bit. We missed a little bit on vehicle maintenance, ran over a couple of departments. I was wondering, are we ruining our vehicles in the storms? Do we need more SUV-type vehicles?
Well, that's where the indirect costs, come into play. I mean, they sort of assume that you're going to have wear and tear on your vehicles, and that's what you're getting paid for. So it's not really, a surplus, so to speak. I mean, that's going to go toward eventually repairs and maintenance on equipment, because they were used.
Someone makes a very good point in that we get reimbursed for hours of machinery used. It's not really a gift
Yeah.
because,
Sort of like a depreciation allowance?
Yeah.
yeah,
To reinvest?
because
Yep.
the more you use the equipment, the more you're going to have to maintain it and repair it. So it's just paying us in advance for what we have to do. Yeah.
And then I guess I just wanted to raise the question again. I just see replacement salary line for the police and the fire department, and I think together we're about $1 million there. And I just always question if we actually do just need to hire floating people full-time.
You're always going to have replacement when you have a certain shift that you have to maintain, and those staff personnel go on vacation or they're sick or personal days. You have to replace them. So it's inherent in the, staffing.
Do you think maybe we should just overstaff those so someone could cover
Yeah,
those?
that's not
No, that-
brings people who are not on the payroll in. That's just where we charged it, okay? If a guy is out and we have to bring somebody in, we don't charge it to his salary line. We charge that expense to replacement. So we're not bringing more people in. But if you look at the salary line for police, it's under by $271,000.
Shift.
Oh, I see. So it's purely...
It's just a
It's purely the
reclassification.
accounting. It's
Yeah.
not that someone else didn't cover the shift
Right.
that they missed. It's just the accounting. And then we're not building up like any kind of systemic overtime in that.
No. not
Okay.
really. Okay. Sheila can better explain than I did, but that's...
No, it's been a struggle for me to really have it click, but I think
It's a
I'm
term.
getting there.
It's a term that I've always had a problem with. Why replacement,
Okay.
But no, we're not replacing the officer.
Right.
An officer comes in for another shift, and it's recorded as a replacement. Okay.
Any others? Ken had a couple of questions. What accounts for the $39,000 overage in legal? I know we've talked about this in the past. We've had more negotiations.
Let me take this one. Okay. Excuse me, the easy ones. The legal, I've been saying since maybe 7 months ago that because of the amount of contract negotiations, the difficulty of the collective bargaining negotiation, we would incur a lot more expense. On top of that, we've had some issues. Transfer station has cost us money. The Teamster agreement has cost us money, but they mostly relate to all the bargaining units we're dealing with now. Okay. Including arbitration costs and that sort of thing.
He had asked a question about what we were going to recover with FEMA. I think that's been answered. On special funds, Jacobs Beach, we get an update on the status of the project in view of the $190,000 expended on June. What's left?
Pretty much Jacobs Beach Phase 1, which was all funded by the state STEEP grant, is completed. The Park and Rec Commission and their director came to us being the selectmen this morning, to begin Phase 2, which is the boardwalk, okay? And that will be funded out of the bonding approval this past April.
And did you approve moving on to phase 2? Is that, that's been?
Well, all we did was to waive the bidding for the design, okay, of the walk itself.
Last question, maybe getting ahead of us here. Guilford Lakes Golf Course. Ken says he's pleased with the increase in membership, significant increase in membership, but wonder why there was an 8% decrease in greens fees over the same period. My suspicion is it's one or the other. They're being offset.
It's fine.
So, but I think, yeah. And I didn't get a chance to fully digest the golf course report, but were the number of rounds down as well?
I think June was a rainy
Yeah.
month, if I
Yeah.
remember, the weekend.
Pretty rainy, yeah, so we lost a lot there. Others?
I had a question about retirement sick leave. Am I understanding this correctly? This is just unpaid sick leave that people have when they retire that gets paid out?
Yes,
Okay, and we forecasted a little bit. Guess we had more
there were
retirements than we
some
expected.
unanticipated retirements.
Okay, just wanted to understand it.
I'm going to go back a little bit. We just realized I missed one or two of Ken's questions here. One relates to pension committee minutes. On page 2, item 4. He wanted to know the status of the defined contribution plan, but in particular his question was, are we assume there will be no participants on the town side for the defined contribution plan this coming year? Will there be any? Are
When
there?
he says coming year, 2014,
Yeah,
we don't know that yet,
okay.
until we've settled some contracts, and if there are new hires.
Okay. And then lastly, this would be one of the questions to put together for Mike Gales, and that was the Cox Window project. Any update on advancing that project from the September 23rd date to the desired August 16th date? And I'm sorry for going out over, I should have caught those earlier. Anything else, Sheila or Joe?
Couple on warrants.
Lawrence? There we go.
Let's see, page 48 on the 712 warrant. I just had a question, Youth and Family Services. Bicycles and helmets, is that part of a grant? Or is that just out of their program?
I believe it's part of the grant and signing.
Because it wasn't on the special weekly fund checks, which just, maybe it doesn't need to be there, but.
It's under their program development line, so that may be actually a budgeted item. I could get more information.
Have an issue with that.
Okay, we'll find out. We have a disagreement here, that's okay.
That's all right, okay. And the only other question, just for internal control purposes, I've noticed it and I've never asked the question. A lot of the petty cash checks are made out to individuals.
Department heads?
Yeah, is that what, and then do they physically go to the bank and cash the check and?
Yeah, I mean, then they have to submit reports to us on how the money is,
Right.
Used, and they're accountable for it.
It just seems kind of odd to make them out to the person as opposed to, I mean, I don't know how else you would do it,
I've
but,
always seen it done that way in private industry, because you have to physically take the check,
Right.
go to the bank, cash it. And they are impressed funds, and like Sheila said,
right,
they only get reimbursed for the amount of receipts. that
receipts
we
they have.
I guess it being kind of the closeout of the year, I just wanted to remind you, there's this thing that I wanted to look at for a little while now, and I was wondering if you could give me some information on the special funds. I know I've got the audit report, but it's almost like a year back or half a year back.
I can't give you anything now off the top of my head.
Oh.
There's just too much information.
I just wanted to
I
remind you.
certainly can provide the board with reports on the bigger funds as of June 30th, even preliminary, which I can do in the next week or so.
That's fine. Anything else? None? Excellent. Medical benefits, another tough month.
I can add a little bit to Mr. Blas's comments, because I think I have the Anthem statement for June. There were 13 catastrophic claims that made up 25% of our total claims. So 13 claims were almost $3 million. They were over $3 million.
Sheila, how would you define a catastrophic claim?
A catastrophic claim, Anthem defines a catastrophic claim being 50%, above 50% of our stop loss. So they're over $125,000, $112,500. The stop loss is $225,000.
And we had 13 of those?
13, $3.1 million. What we don't know, what I don't know, is how many of them are going to continue, start again at zero.
Right, in July.
And it's a combination of, town board of ed, subscribers, spouses.
Right.
It's just, I don't know.
Right. To Kim's point earlier, it may be one of the areas we look at with undesignated fund balance. I know we want to continue to grow undesignated fund balance, but we want to make sure that we keep an eye on this because we're now back in a deficit position, net of the IBNR, and we had been north of that for a couple of years.
Right, and what's not recorded now, because I don't have the number, is the IBNR.
Right.
And I think the IBNR has been close to 30 days or a little less. Now our 30-day number is
It's a
much
big
higher.
number, right? And
It's higher than
We're still accounting
7.
for 750.
The only thing is that now the claims are processing faster, so the IBNR might be shorter than 30 days, which would help us as well.
Right.
I don't know. So it's something that when we get that information from Anthem, we could discuss.
Okay. Anything else, Sean?
I just have one
Sure.
comment, is that when Sheila finally comes up with the number for surplus,
Right.
I think at that point, her and I have talked about this, that we're going to sit down and make a recommendation to this board as what we suggest
Okay.
how the surplus should go.
Yeah.
Whether it all goes into undesignated reserve, or maybe some for the medical.
Right. Yeah, we'd probably appreciate it. Good. Currently, we're at about 5% on our undesignated fund balance, and adding 900,000 on, well, our budget increased by what, 3 million last year?
Right.
So we're adding 900,000, so that keeps us, that's going to probably bring us closer to the 6% level, which we want to continue to show that growth, particularly as we get ready to go to the market for a substantial amount of borrowing. But we do need to be mindful of a couple of those other accounts.
Yeah, I think Sheila will go to market in September for the first round
Yes.
for the school. So we'll have those numbers before then.
Excellent. All right, is there a motion to approve the expenditure for town government for June 2013?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Any recusals?
Recuse on commercial air services, please.
Item 6, committee reports, 6.1, owing to the fact that Mike Ailes isn't here, we don't have them. Kim, is there anything further on the work you're doing with the financial statements? No. Okay. Old business. Item 8, new business? Hearing none, public forum? None. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, all abstained, any abstentions? Nope.
1 hour. Very good, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you.